there's a certain kind of story,
Yeah.
that we're all just completely wired to consume,
Oh.
especially in the true crime world.
Oh, absolutely. The perfect victim narrative.
Exactly. You have a young mom, she's beautiful, lives in a nice quiet town, and then one day, poof, snatched away by these like faceless monsters. It taps into this really primal fear.
It does. It creates this sense of collective vulnerability. We see a story like that and we think, wow, if that can happen to her in the middle of the day, then it can happen to anyone.
And that fear, it just drives everything. The news, the online chatter, the police response.
The massive response.
And today, we're doing a deep dive on a case that, it didn't just use that fear, it weaponized it to a degree that is, frankly, masterful and deeply disturbing.
We're talking about Sherri Papini.
We are. But we're not just going to retell the kidnapping story. Our mission here is to really deconstruct the deception. The whole thing was so elaborate, so incredibly committed, it held up for years, even against the FBI.
It really is a case study in manipulation. I mean, think about the arc of it. It starts with, a terrified husband finding a cell phone on a jogging trail in 2016. It then goes through this Thanksgiving Day miracle return, and it ends, ultimately, in a federal prison cell.
But the thing is, the story isn't over. That's what makes this so wild and why we're tackling it now.
Right. There are new developments. As recently as 2025, the whole narrative is...
Yeah.
Well, it's shifting yet again.
It is. So for our source material today, we have just a mountain of it. We've got the original 2016 police reports from the Shasta County Sheriff's Office.
We also have the 2022 federal affidavit, which, if you ever want to read a masterclass in methodical investigation, this is it. It's incredibly damning.
Oh, it's amazing. And we have the transcripts from her plea hearing, but we're also pulling in the very latest stuff, the 2024 documentaries, and this is the big one, the Investigation Discovery series that just came out in mid-2025.
Which is where Sherri herself tries to pivot the whole story.
Yeah, that's our mission here, to get past the headline, she faked it. Okay, we know that, but how? How do you fake a kidnapping for 22 days? How do you have the sheer will to starve yourself, to sell a lie?
And why? Why, in 2025, after you've pleaded guilty, do you try to rewrite the whole thing?
That's like dealing with an unreliable narrator, but in real life. We use that term for books and movies.
But here she is, a person who seems to be able to just bend reality, her own and everyone else's, to fit whatever her need is at that moment.
So let's go back. Let's start where the illusion began. It's November 2nd, 2016. Redding, California. A Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, and the setting is important. Redding isn't a huge city. It feels safe. It's that kind of Northern California outdoorsy community.
Right.
And Sherri Papini, she's 34. The media quickly dubs her super mom. She's out for a jog, something she does all the time, maybe a mile or so from her house.
And this is where the curtain goes up. Her husband, Keith Papini, he gets home from his job. He worked at Best Buy. And the house is just silent.
And at first, you just think, oh, she's running an errand, she'll be back. But something feels off to him. So he grabs his phone, pulls up the Find My iPhone app.
And this moment, tracking the phone, it's the first piece of stagecraft in this whole drama.
Yeah.
But of course, nobody knew it then.
No, not at all. He tracks her phone to this one intersection, Sunrise Drive and Old Oregon Trail.
So he jumps in his car, drives over there, and what he finds is it's just so perfectly chilling.
It is. He finds her cell phone and her earbuds. But they're not, thrown in a bush like they would be in a struggle. They're placed.
The police reports are so specific about this, the earbuds were coiled.
Coiled. The phone is sitting there, screen up. The report uses the words neatly placed.
Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. If you were being abducted by two armed people, as she later claimed.
You're fighting for your life.
Right. You're kicking, screaming, dropping everything. You were not thinking, oh, hold on a sec, let me just coil my earbuds and set my phone down gently.
Of course not. But in that moment, for Keith and for the police who arrive, that visual, it told a different story.
It looked like a violent interruption.
Yeah.
Like a breadcrumb.
Exactly. It screamed, I was right here, and then I was taken. It was a clue left specifically for him to find.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked perfectly. The police response was immediate. This was not a let's wait 24 hours missing person case.
No, they treated it as a stranger abduction from minute one. And the scale of the search, it's hard to really convey. The Shasta County Sheriff's Office put, almost its entire detective division on this.
Wow.
They wrote nearly 20 search warrants. They were pulling cell tower data, digging through bank records, emails, social media. They even sent investigators all the way to Michigan chasing down some leads.
And the FBI gets involved very, very early.
Right away. And while law enforcement is doing the high-tech stuff, the community is on the ground. You have volunteer groups organizing search parties. Flyers are going up on every telephone pole.
And then the National McGee descends. The People magazine cover hits. And that Supermom nickname, it just sticks.
And that label is so important to the deception because it builds this protective wall around her. Who would ever question a supermom? Who would think she'd abandon her two beautiful little kids?
It basically short-circuited any initial skepticism that might normally come up, about the husband or marital problems.
It insulated her completely. And the narrative that started to form based on what little they had was that she'd been taken by someone in a dark SUV.
And then, for 22 days, just radio silence.
Which is an eternity in a kidnapping case. Statistically, if you're not found within the first 48 hours, the chances of a safe return, they just plummet.
So the whole country is basically holding its breath, assuming the worst.
Right. Everyone was preparing for a tragic ending until Thanksgiving Day, November 24th, 2016. Which brings us to the next act, the miraculous return.
It was framed exactly like that, a true miracle. It's 4:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving. A truck driver is on Interstate 5 down in Yolo County.
And that's about 150 miles south of Reading, so a long way from home.
And this driver sees a woman on the side of the road frantically trying to flag someone down.
And the sight of her, it's something straight out of a horror film. She's not just a woman who's been through something rough. She is physically bound.
She had a chain around her waist, her hands were restrained, and her physical condition was just shocking.
The official weight was 87 pounds. Which is, about 39 kilograms? For a woman of her height, that's life-threateningly thin.
Her nose was broken. Her long blonde hair, which was kind of her signature look, had been just hacked off.
Yeah, just all ragged and uneven.
And then, the detail. The one thing that sent this story from a national headline to an international obsession.
The branding.
On her right shoulder, burned into her skin, was a brand. And it read, Exodus.
Let's talk about that word for a minute. Exodus.
Okay, so the immediate thought for most people is biblical. The book of Exodus, Moses, escaped from slavery.
Right. And Sherri even told investigators later that she thought it looked like a Bible verse. But think about the pure strangeness of that word choice for a kidnapper. Exodus means a mass departure, a leaving, an escape from bondage. Why would you brand someone you're holding captive with a word that means leaving?
It's so literary. It feels like something a screenwriter would come up with for symbolic weight.
Exactly. It doesn't feel like something a human trafficking ring would do. And the brand itself, it wasn't some jagged, messy burn. It was legible. It was almost stylized. It looked like it was done with care.
Which implies time and intent, not just random brutality.
A lot of time and a lot of intent.
So she's found. She's alive. The nation rejoices. And then her story starts to come out. She tells the sheriff, Tom Busenko, that she was abducted by two Hispanic women.
And this is what becomes known as the two Latinas narrative. She said they were in a dark SUV, that they always wore masks to cover their faces, or they'd put a hood over her head.
She even had these weirdly specific details. She said they played loud mariachi-style music constantly to disorient her.
And that detail about her captors being Hispanic women, looking at it now with the benefit of hindsight, it was an incredibly calculated move.
How so?
Well, by making her supposed abductors Hispanic, she tapped directly into these really potent, very politically charged fears about border crime, cartels, trafficking.
It immediately directs the investigation away from anyone in her life.
Completely. It points the finger at a faceless, menacing other. It's a classic trope in false reporting, actually. Blame a demographic that society is already, sort of primed to be suspicious of.
So it basically guaranteed the FBI would spend countless hours and resources looking for a phantom SUV and two women who
never existed. And she was specific. She worked with a sketch artist. She described one as older with thin eyebrows and the other as younger with thick eyebrows and curly hair. These weren't vague descriptions. They were detailed lies designed to burn up police time.
So the whole world is celebrating. It's a Thanksgiving miracle. But inside the Shasta County Sheriff's Office, the mood was a little different.
That's right. And this is where we start to see the first cracks in the facade. While the public was just purely relieved, the detectives on the case, they were starting to get puzzled.
Some of the details just weren't lining up.
Not at all. Sheriff Bozenko and the FBI agents, they knew that this didn't fit any typical abduction pattern. First, kidnappers almost never hold an adult woman for 3 weeks, abuse her, and then just let her go.
Right. What's the motive? Usually it's ransom or sexual assault or murder. There was no ransom demand here at all.
None. Keith had put up a reward, and a private negotiator even tried to make contact, but the kidnappers never reached out. It makes no sense. Why risk getting caught for 22 days for absolutely zero gain?
And there was another issue, wasn't there? With her husband, Keith.
Yeah, law enforcement was getting pretty frustrated with him. He was doing all these media interviews going on 2020, and he was sharing details about the case that they really wanted kept quiet.
They felt he was compromising the investigation.
They did, but looking back now, you can see he was playing the part of a desperate husband. He truly believed his wife had been tortured. He was, in a way, the primary audience for her performance.
He was being manipulated into being her biggest advocate to the public.
Absolutely. But the real problem for Sherri, the thing that would eventually bring the whole house of cards down, wasn't the timeline or the motive. It was science.
It was the DNA.
The DNA. This is the real smoking gun. When she was in the hospital, they did a full forensic workup. They took swabs from her body, from her clothing.
And they found DNA that wasn't hers.
They found foreign DNA, and specifically, they found male DNA.
Okay, so that is an immediate, gigantic red flag. Her story is, I was held by 2 Hispanic women.
It's a massive contradiction. Where does unknown male DNA come from if you've been isolated with 2 women for 3 weeks? And of course, they immediately tested it against her husband, Keith.
And it wasn't a match.
Not a match. So they have this profile of a complete unknown. They run it through CODIS, the big FBI criminal database.
Nothing.
Nothing. No hits. And so for the next few years, the case goes cold, at least publicly. Sherri's at home recovering. She's collecting victim compensation funds from the state. She's the brave survivor.
But all that time, that DNA sample is just sitting in an FBI lab. A ticking time bomb.
Just waiting for technology to catch up.
And in 2020, it finally did. Which brings us to the unraveling.
This is where it gets really interesting. By 2020, a new tool had become mainstream for law enforcement. It's called investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG.
This is the same technique they used to catch the Golden State Killer, right?
Yeah, the very same. So instead of just checking the DNA against a database of criminals, they upload the profile to public genealogy websites.
Like Ancestry.com or 23andMe.
Exactly. Places where everyday people send in their saliva to find out their family history. So the FBI isn't looking for the suspect himself. They're looking for his second cousin or his great aunt.
They build the family tree backwards to find their guy.
They do. And they get a hit. They find distant relatives of the man whose DNA was on Sherri's underwear. They painstakingly trace the family tree down through the generations, and they land on one person, a man named James Reyes.
And James Reyes is not a cartel hitman.
No. James Reyes is an ex-boyfriend of Sherri Papini, someone she had dated years and years ago, long before she even met Keith.
Wow. I can't imagine being the investigator who makes that connection. The whole case just turns on its head in that one moment.
It changes everything. The paradigm shifts from stranger abduction to something else entirely. So in August of 2020, the FBI and the sheriff's office decide it's time to pay Sherri another visit.
But they don't just go and arrest her. They're smarter than that.
Much smarter. They lay a trap. I've read the transcript of this interview from the federal affidavit, and it is just a fascinating piece of psychological theater.
So what do they do?
They bring her in, acting like it's just a routine update on her cold case. They're friendly. They show her the old sketches of the Hispanic women she helped create. And she's talking, she's playing along.
And then they drop the bomb.
Then the agent just slides a photograph across the table. It's a photo of James Reyes.
And what does she do?
Nothing. Her reaction is just a master class in denial. She looks at the picture of the man she spent 3 weeks with, the man whose DNA they found on her. And she just looks puzzled. She says, I don't know him.
She doesn't even flinch.
No breakdown, no confession. She commits to the lie, even with the truth literally staring her in the face. It's incredible.
But it's too late. They'd already talked to Reyes, hadn't they?
Oh, yeah. They had already found him living in Costa Mesa in Southern California. And unlike Sherri, he didn't put up a fight.
He confessed.
He crumbled almost immediately. He told them the entire story. He said Sherri had contacted him completely out of the blue, claiming she was in an abusive marriage and needed to escape.
A claim for which there was zero evidence, by the way.
None whatsoever. But Reyes bought it. So he gets in a rental car, he drives all the way up to Redding, And he meets her at that same intersection where Keith found the phone.
She just gets in the car and they drive off.
That's it. So while the entire state of California is searching forests and draining lakes, Sherri Papini is hiding out in a condo in Southern California.
But it wasn't like a secret vacation, right? It gets much, much weirder.
So much weirder. Reyes told investigators she basically locked herself in a bedroom the whole time. She barely ate anything.
Which explains the 87 pounds. The dramatic weight loss.
Yes, but think about the sheer force of will that takes. To intentionally starve yourself for 3 weeks. That is physically agonizing. This wasn't just faking a story, she was method acting.
Wow.
She was creating the physical evidence for her lie through self-punishment.
And the other injuries. The broken nose, the bruises, the brand.
That's the most disturbing part. Reyes admitted that she directed him to do it.
What do you mean?
She gave him instructions. She told him to use a wood-burning tool to brand her shoulder. She told him to punch her to create bruises. He said she even put hockey pucks on either side of her nose and slammed them together to break it.
That's just beyond comprehension. The level of dissociation from your own body you'd have to do that.
She was writing the script and directing the movie, and her own body was the star special effect. She knew that if she came back looking healthy, people would be suspicious. But if she came back broken and brutalized...
No one would dare question her story.
No one.
Okay, we also have to talk about the money, because this wasn't just some elaborate play for attention, was it?
No, there was a significant financial motive. From 2017 to 2021, after she returned, she applied for and received more than $30,000 from the California Victim Compensation Board.
Which is a state fund set up for
actual victims of violent crime. It's meant to help pay for therapy, medical bills, lost wages for people who have been shot or assaulted or whose family members have been murdered.
So she was literally stealing money from a fund meant for rape victims and trauma survivors.
And using it to pay for things like new window blinds for her house and her credit card bills. And on top of that, she got disability payments for the PTSD and anxiety she claimed she had from the abduction.
And what about the cost of the investigation itself, the taxpayer money?
The official estimate is over $300,000 just in direct costs. That doesn't even account for the thousands of man-hours that were diverted from real crimes.
So the evidence is now overwhelming. This brings us to March 3rd, 2022.
Yep. The FBI has the DNA, they have the confession from Reyes, they have the financial records, the trap is sprung, they arrest her.
And the charges are lying to federal agents and mail fraud.
Mail fraud is the key one. It sounds kind of boring, but it's the federal government's hook. Because she received those victim compensation checks through the U.S. mail, it becomes a federal crime.
And it carries a heavy sentence, which gives prosecutors a lot of leverage.
Huge leverage. And it worked. She initially said she was innocent, but faced with the mountain's evidence, she knew she had no shot at trial. Just 6 weeks after her arrest, in April 2022, she signs a plea deal.
She admits the whole thing was a hoax.
The whole thing. And the personal fallout for her family is just immediate and brutal.
Keith Papini, the man who stood by her for 6 years, defended her on national television.
2 days after she pleads guilty, he files for divorce and for sole custody of their children. Can you imagine the depth of that betrayal? Realizing that the trauma you and your children have lived with for years was a complete fabrication by your wife.
It's devastating. So in September of 2022, she goes to court for sentencing.
And she gets 18 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, and she was ordered to pay back just over $309,000 in restitution.
Her attorney tried to argue that she had mental health issues and that the public humiliation was punishment enough.
But the judge wasn't buying it. He pointed to the sophistication and calculation of the hoax. So she went to prison. She served her time and was released to a halfway house in August of 2023.
And that, in any normal case, would be the end of the story.
Right. Case closed.
But this is not a normal case.
Yeah.
And Sherri Papini does not let the story end. Which brings us to the absolutely baffling 2025 twist.
This is the part that just, it makes your head spin.
Mm-hmm.
In May of 2025, that new investigation Discovery series airs, Sherri Papini, Caught in the Lie. And for the first time, Sherri agrees to a public interview.
Now, let's just recap. She stood up in a federal court and admitted under oath that the whole kidnapping was a hoax.
Yes.
She admitted she went voluntarily with James Reyes and that the injuries were part of the staging.
Correct.
So in this new 2025 interview, what is her news story?
She's trying to thread an impossibly small needle. She admits now, finally, that she wasn't kidnapped with the two Hispanic women. She can't deny that anymore.
Because of the DNA.
Right. But she's now claiming that while she was staying with James Reyes, he became abusive. She's saying the injuries, the brand, the broken nose, the bruises were inflicted by him non-consensually.
So her news story is, okay, fine, I ran away from my husband to be with my ex-boyfriend, but then he turned into the monster and victimized me.
That's it, exactly. She's trying to shed the label of hoaxer and reclaim the label of victim, just a different kind of victim this time. It wasn't a kidnapping hoax, it was a domestic violence situation.
Okay, but does this new narrative hold up to any scrutiny at all?
Not even a little bit. First, James Reyes has absolutely no criminal history of violence. None. Second, the FBI had him take a polygraph test where they specifically asked him about the injuries.
And he passed?
He passed. He has maintained consistently from day one that she asked him to do everything. Think about it. Why would he confess to helping with a hoax if he was actually a kidnapper and torturer?
That makes no sense. He'd be facing life in prison. He got immunity for testifying about the hoax.
His story benefits him, yes, but it has also never changed. Her story has now had 3 different versions.
And there was some new forensic information that came out in 2025, too, about bite marks.
Yes, this was a detail she really emphasized in her new story. She claimed Reyes bit her repeatedly. So investigators had medical examiners re-review the original photos from 2016.
Right.
They weren't bite marks. The experts concluded they were rashes, probably from eczema or some kind of contact dermatitis.
So she's looking at a skin rash
Yeah.
and years later reinterpreting it as evidence of a violent assault.
It speaks to a pathological need to construct a narrative of victimhood out of anything available.
And in another 2025 interview for Inside Edition, she talks about how she can't get a job.
Right. She says her name is just too notorious that no one will hire her, which, to be fair, is probably true.
It is objectively true.
But the framing is what's key. She presents it as yet another way the world is victimizing her, not as a direct and predictable consequence of her own criminal actions.
This pattern of behavior, it's just so ingrained. And it turns out it didn't just start in 2016, did it? We have to look at the prequel to all this.
No, it didn't. This is maybe the most telling detail in the entire case. If you go back into the Shasta County Sheriff's archives, there's a police report from 2003. Sherri was about 21 years old at the time.
And who filed that report?
Her own mother, Loretta Grafe, called the police on her daughter.
And what was the reason?
She told the dispatcher that Sherri had been harming herself and blaming the injuries on others.
Wow. In 2003, that's 13 years before the kidnapping hoax.
It establishes a clear, long-term pattern. This wasn't a one-time bad decision made under stress. This appears to be a deeply rooted psychological mechanism. When she feels a loss of control or craves a surge of attention, she resorts to self-harm and then creates an external enemy to blame for it.
In 2003, it was a family drama. In 2016, she just took the same script and scaled it up for a national audience.
The behavior is identical, only the stage got bigger.
And now our culture has kind of immortalized her for it. I mean, Eminem dropped her name in a track in 2024.
Yep. Like Sherri Papini, Harry Houdini, I vanish into the thin air. She's become a pop culture shorthand for faking a disappearance.
Then you have the Lifetime movie, Hoax, The Kidnapping of Sherri Papini, and the Hulu docuseries, Perfect Wife.
And for somebody who may have narcissistic or histrionic personality traits, and again, we're not diagnosing her, but these are terms that have been floated by experts in relation to the case, all of this attention is currency.
Even negative tension is still attention.
For some people, it's validation. It reinforces that you are important enough to be talked about. So in a strange way, the documentaries, the songs, even this deep dive we're doing, it all feeds into the persona.
So let's try to sum this up. Let's talk about the cost of all of this, beyond just the restitution money.
The damage is immense. It's the boy who cried wolf effect, but on a massive scale. When a huge public case like this turns out to be a lie, it makes the public cynical. So the next time a woman genuinely disappears while she's out for a jog, there's going to be that flicker of hesitation in the public consciousness, that little voice that says, I wonder if this is another Papini.
And that hesitation could cost someone their life. It casts a shadow of doubt over every legitimate victim.
It does, and it completely erodes the trust between a community and law enforcement. The people of Redding poured their hearts out for her. They searched for days, they donated money, they prayed for her, and all of that goodwill, all of that empathy was weaponized and thrown back in their faces. It makes people wary of helping the next time.
So here's the final question, the thing I want to leave our listeners with. Right. Legally, this case is closed. She confessed, she went to prison, she paid. Well, she's supposed to pay the restitution.
Legally, yes, but psychologically, it feels like it's still wide open.
Because in 2025, she is still out there, trying to sell a story, trying to convince everyone that she was a victim after all, just a victim of a different man. So here's the question. Is this a calculated, cynical attempt to rehabilitate her public image so she can maybe get a book deal or just live a normal life?
Or is it something deeper? Has she told this lie so many times? Has she physically committed to it so intensely with the starvation and the branding that she's actually rewritten her own memory? Is it possible that on some level she now actually believes her latest version of the story?
That, to me, is the most chilling possibility of all. That for Sherri Papini, the truth isn't a fixed point. It's not what actually happened. The truth is just whatever story she needs to tell to survive the moment.
And that makes her one of the most fascinating and, frankly, tragic case studies in deception that we've ever seen.
A deep dive for sure. Thank you for joining us on this one.
It was a heavy one. Stay skeptical out there.